Hello, everyone, and thanks for listening. So, this article is entitled Democrats Are Trying to Help Banks Racially Discriminate in Housing Mortgages. And so, I mentioned in a previous video about redlining. And so, this article talks about it. It doesn't go into detail about it, but it briefly touches on it. And so, it goes on to say this article is by Emma Roller, and it's out of this reading from the Splinter. And so, even the title, when you just read it, it says Democrats are trying to help the banks racially discriminate in housing mortgages. And that doesn't really sound good, does it? So, if you're not familiar with this guy, his name is Tim Kaine. He's the what would have been the vice president had Hillary had have won the presidency. During the 2016 presidential election, Virginia Senator Tim Kaine touted his experience as a former civil rights attorney, and in particular, his experience representing people of color who faced housing discrimination. So now Kaine, along with 11 of his Democratic colleagues in the Senate, they're supporting a financial deregulation package that would curtail the government's ability to police banks' discriminatory lending practices. Just listening to that doesn't sound good. So that makes you wonder, you know, a lot of people put a lot of pressure on Republicans to say Republicans are doing this and they're doing that, and some people don't really look at what the Democrats are doing, and they think that one side is better than the other. But have you ever stopped to wonder if it's not just one side doing something wrong, but both sides? So this would be one of those things that would make you wonder. So a HuffPost Zach Carter reports the legislation would block the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau from collecting key data showing when and where families of color are being overcharged for home loans or steered into predatory products. So it's just one small provision in a broad financial deregulation package, which, thanks to backing from 12 Democratic senators, is almost certain to clear both chambers of Congress and receive President Donald Trump's signature. So, detailed numbers from the CFPB show that the data loss would be heavily concentrated on poor neighborhoods, precisely communities most at risk for predatory lending. More than 1,700 census tracts officially designated as low and moderate income would lose at least 20% of the data they collect without a new law, while 185 cities and towns would lose at least 10%. This bill would almost certainly serve to exacerbate racial discrimination against prospective Black homeowners. That doesn't sound good either. Banks are notorious for refusing home loans to Black families, which is a practice called redlining. And this has gone on for many, many years, many decades. That's why you don't see as many Black people owning homes. And it's harder for Black people to get into home ownership, which is one of the first ways of wealth building. And that is the reason why you see some of the problems that you see. And the neighborhoods where they're all Black is because they steer people into those neighborhoods so that you have no other alternatives but to live in places that you can afford. So, which are, quote unquote, some people would call the ghettos. A lot of times those ghettos are not there for an accident. It's for a purpose of discrimination because they've steered people in those neighborhoods. So this bill would almost certainly serve to exacerbate the racial discrimination against prospective Black homeowners. Banks are notorious for refusing home loans to Black families, a practice called redlining. Kaine should be more than familiar with this practice. He once won $26 million lawsuit against Nationwide Insurance. after the lender refused to offer insurance to Black homeowners in majority Black neighborhoods. So when the banks offer or they do offer mortgages to Black and Hispanic families, they are costly and very high. A 2016 study from the National Bureau of Economic Research found that Hispanic Americans are 78% more likely to be given a high cost mortgage, and Black Americans, hold on and listen to this, are 105% more likely to be given a high cost mortgage. That is ridiculous. So now Democrats in the Senate are working with Republicans to make it easier for banks to get away with this practice. Let me read that again. Now, Democrats in the Senate are working with Republicans to make it easy for banks to get away with this practice. By further eroding the CFPB's oversight and regulatory powers, banks would be able to continue overcharging Black families and pushing them into expensive and risky mortgages with little fear of reprisal. Here's how Kaine is defending his support for the legislation. A Kaine spokesperson said that the senator is just looking to provide relief for small community banks and credit unions in Virginia while strengthening consumer protections for all Americans. The spokesperson also noted Kaine's background as a former fair housing attorney who fought against discriminatory lending practices. Senator Kaine supports stringent requirements to protect against unfair lending, and this legislation keeps the protections in place. So despite his past bona fides, Kaine has firmly established himself as a banking-friendly Democrat. He's helping Republicans roll back Dodd-Frank's financial regulations and voted to reopen the government after Democrats shut it down for about 6 hours. All of 6 hours, leaving hundreds and thousands of DACA recipients' lives in limbo, which was not that long ago. The Senate will vote on the package next week. Here are the 12 Democrats and one independent who are co-sponsoring the bill. So the names are listed here, and it says, here are the office phone numbers, and do with those what you will. So it leaves those. And so here underneath are recommended stories, which probably will go into more detail on redlining, how the U.S. government locked Black Americans out of attaining American dreams. The Senate Democrats join hands with Republicans to sell you out to banks. And so Emma Roller is the one that wrote this lovely article. And when you click on the names of the phone numbers that she left, it sends you to states that represent under that person that represents that area. And so I believe what I seen here was Senator Dianne Feinstein for California, because I was looking. Kennedy John. Okay. Because I was looking at it and I was trying to say, okay, where's California? Has G. And South Carolina, Tim Scott. All of the Democrats. And so this really doesn't sit well hearing this. And believe it or not, Elizabeth Warren's name is on here, class 1. And, you know, I really liked her because I thought she really stood up for a lot of the rights of people, especially people who didn't have a voice. But you'd want to call these people and ask them, okay, what's the whole purpose behind all of this? And how are they going to protect people so that they won't be steered again or redlined again? Because it leaves the door open for these predatory lenders to go back to what they've been doing. And what they always know how to do is steer people and overcharge people for, you know, housing. So I have here for California, Kamala Harris. Her name shows up. I did see another name actually. It has Kamala Harris, so it might have changed. I don't know. Maybe they changed things. I don't know. It might be more than one individual as well. So, but you can look at it, and so all you got to do is just click on it, and then the names pop up, and so you can call these people, or you could write to them, however, to try to find out more about what the purpose of all of this is. And so I'm sure there's got to be something in place so that this won't start, again. But it's not looking like that. It's looking like, from the way he's saying it, he's more about protecting. I just thought it was an interesting concept to view, because it got my attention and I was looking at it earlier and I didn't think that this was good at all. And already there's a lot of problems, even in California alone, with the housing market, and then a lot of homelessness. A lot of those people didn't end up out there because a lot of them are not like, oh, I just want to be homeless. Something in the course of their life happened and they ended up out there. I know some people say alcohol, drugs, and all the other stuff, but not everybody's ended up out there because of drugs. I'm starting to see families that are homeless, and they're living in RVs in places that, like on streets, and they're policing them and giving them tickets. They can't stay in certain areas for too long. And so they try to get them to move along. We have, and I will probably put up a few tents if I can share that. I don't know if it'll come on here, but they are policing the homeless here in Los Angeles real heavily, you know. And so you being homeless in LA, it's like it's a crime. And so this is a big problem. And here you got people, maybe they saved some money. You always were told, if you just pull up your bootstraps, you just work hard, you can get anything you want. Well, that's not attainable for everyone. And when you see things like this makes it even all the more harder to attain those goals. So I just thought that was an interesting concept to view when I saw that. But leave your comments and thoughts on what you think about this. But this right here doesn't sit well, I'm sure, with the general population, be it so it may. And then it makes you doubtful. You wonder, you say, okay, is it the right? Is it the right that's doing all of this, lying? Is it the left? And now you're wondering, maybe it's both of them. Maybe there's some ulterior motive. Maybe it's all rigged. So anyway, with that being said, I'm going to cut this video to a bare minimum. It may not be short, but yeah. Discriminate in housing mortgages. And this is a huge problem here in California. And I can just speak for experience that I have seen people that basically, those that aren't living paycheck to paycheck and they might make a little more, have also complained that it's unattainable to move into home ownership because of some of the things like this that are going on. The steering, the redlining, the fear that you're not going to be given a fair deal and that you're going to be overpriced. So leave your comments and thoughts on what you think about this video, and thanks for listening. Bye.